Welcome to Antitrust Code by Concurrences. Concurrences is the leading antitrust database with over 30,000 articles on competition law. Concurrences is also the largest network of antitrust experts, with lawyers, economists, enforcers, and academics in 85 countries. By listening to this podcast, you will learn the fundamentals of competition law and hear about the latest antitrust news, thanks to our guests, the best experts in the antitrust world.
Okay, hello. My name is Aleksander Tombiński. I'm an antitrust counsel with Clifford Chance in Brussels, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this episode of Concurrences Antitrust Code podcast, which we are recording live from the Tech Antitrust conference here in Palo Alto. And I am joined here by Andrea Marvan Saltiel, the chair of the Cofece, the Mexican Competition Authority. Welcome, Andrea.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Alexander, and thank you for Concurrences for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Andrea, the timing of this podcast could not be better. Mexico is undergoing a major reform, which involves the disappearance of Cofece, and a new competition authority is set to assume all competition-related competencies. So today I wanted us to cover three questions: where things stand on the antitrust reform, what impact will the reform have on cases that are currently pending before Cofece, and what will enforcement of competition law in Mexico look like going forward? So let us start with the first topic, the current situation of the Mexican antitrust reform. Could you tell us a bit more about the setting up of the new competition authority, where things stand, and when it is expected to be operational?
Yes, I'll be very happy to. I think those are three interesting points that we can talk about today. So where are we standing? At the end of last year, Congress approved now a constitutional amendment to the Mexican Constitution. Cofece used to be a constitutionally autonomous agency. And so there was a major reform, not only involving Cofece, but also other regulators and agencies. And as a result of that reform, which is a simplification reform or an organic simplification reform, there will still be a competition agency, as you just mentioned it. The Constitution states that agency will be independent operationally and in their decisions. It will have its own, it will be an entity of its own, but it will no longer be constitutionally independent. It will be an independent agency within or being a part of the executive branch. So that is the current state of affairs, and how Cofece will transform, will disappear, and the new agency will emerge as an independent agency of the executive.
And how will that new authority be staffed? Is it expected that Cofece staff will roll over into the new competition authority, or should we expect an entirely different authority?
Yes, we don't have that clear, an exact answer, but it is expected. Cofece has about 480 staff members. So almost 500 members. And all of our staff members have been doing a career in Cofece. And they are the people actually who have the technical knowledge to do the merger reviews and to take on the investigation. So given their deep knowledge and their expertise for complex economic and legal analysis, we expect for most of that staff members, or for all of the staff members, to transfer into the new agency. There will be managerial changes. There will be changes in the heads, but what we do expect is for the staff members to continue in this new agency.
Yeah, that level of continuity is certainly reassuring for businesses who have dealings with the competition authority. But we focused a bit on the restructuring of the competition authority. But beyond that restructuring, are there does the reform foresee other major changes, be it to the substance or the procedure of competition law in Mexico?
On the substantive approach, I think the most important change due to this reform is that now Mexico will have a sole competition agency. As you might remember, since 2013, we have Cofece, which is the competition agency who can investigate and prosecute and is in charge of protecting competition in all markets except telecom, and broadcasting. We had a regulator, a special regulator, that was also the competition agency. That is no longer going to happen. As a result of the reform, now the new competition agency will be in charge of protecting competition in all markets and in all sectors. So I think that is definitely the most important substantive change. And we do have to wait for the implementing legislation, because there might be also some other changes, not as significant as this one, but I can predict that we might see a change in higher sanctions, or in maybe in shorter investigations periods, etc.
Okay. So moving to the second point, like this reform does not happen in the vacuum, and Cofece is still handling a number of cases. We are here at the Tech Antitrust conference, so just in the tech and digital markets, at least I am aware of the e-commerce sector inquiry and investigations relating to in-app purchases and online advertising. But more broadly, how will the restructuring impact ongoing cases, if at all?
That is an excellent question, and we have to ensure, and we are working and contributing to ensure that this process and this transformation will not impact our cases. So this happened once when Cofece before was also was already an agency from the executive, and when Cofece transformed into an autonomous agency, that already happened once, and we were able to ensure the integrity of all of our files and all of our proceedings. Currently, Cofece has about 200 merger reviews per year. Plus our ongoing investigations, some of them in tech, others in more traditional markets, which we might talk about later. But we have to ensure that these procedures will transfer integrally and that they will not be affected. I would just add another key issue or key procedure that's very important for us is our first collective action. So we filed that first collective action as Cofece, and we have to ensure that the new agency can continue that procedure.
And is there anything that companies should be doing or thinking about doing as they anticipate the change of the enforcement agency?
And I think companies are very welcome to the discussion. I think it should be an open and frank discussion of what areas in which you can improve competition policy in Mexico. Maybe what areas should need more clear, more transparency, or I'm sure that companies will say shorter merger review. I am quite sure that will be on the top of their list. But I think we can all contribute to the discussion on how to make a stronger and a better competition policy in Mexico, which is clear, transparent, and unbiased to the companies, but also with a clear mandate to benefit consumers and to benefit the general population.
That's a great segue into the last topic, which is looking ahead, and what the future of competition enforcement in Mexico will be. So, since we are here in Palo Alto at the Tech Antitrust Conference, let us start with the tech cases that are pending before Cofece. Can you tell us a bit more about where these cases stand and what are the expected next steps?
Yes, gladly. We have two ongoing investigations, which are still in the investigation stage regarding to on app purchases. That is for abuse of dominance. We also have a market investigation. As you probably know, Cofece is one of the few jurisdictions that can actually conduct market investigations. So we have a market investigation, which the investigation period has concluded. The investigative authority of Cofece issued a preliminary opinion, a preliminary decision, which basically states that two companies in the e-commerce market in Mexico have sufficient market power, that they have a lot of market power, and he found different barriers to competition within that market. But right now we are at the, as I say, the second stage after the investigation. Now we are listening to all of the involved parties regarding the investigation, and then the new competition agency will have to take a decision. We also have another investigation, which I would say is more on its last stage because the investigation period is over. And then the second phase, where we listen to all of the involved parties, is also quite advanced, and it's related to online advertisement. So I think the decision on online advertisement should be coming soon. The two other decisions, they could not be, they will probably not be determined by Cofece, but by the new authority.
Okay, and so now moving beyond tech cases, you've been championing the need to focus on sectors that directly impact households. Do you expect that focus to continue with the new competition authority, or should we expect a shift?
No, I definitely think that will continue. I think there can be, and this is something I've always said, tech cases are very important, not just in Mexico, around the world, but we cannot lose focus on traditional markets. Traditional markets are what encompasses most of our merger analysis and most of our proceedings. And I would predict that this will continue because these traditional markets are what affect mostly consumers, households, small companies and medium companies. And if you look at some of the policy priorities that are now going to be implementing in Mexico, I think that can totally cross or is compatible with these priorities on focusing on consumers, on households, on small enterprises, and what can competition do for them. Something that we were speaking about before starting the podcast, which I think is key. I think competition policy and enforcement has to be unbiased, transparent. It has to bring certainties to companies and to agencies, but that it does not exclude the fact that competition policy has to work towards the population, has to work towards households, has to work towards workers, has to work towards consumers. So I think that those two policy objectives or those two objectives are compatible and should be compatible, and I think that will continue.
Okay, and moving to my last question for today's podcast, to what extent should we expect the industrial policy objectives and national security concerns to weigh in on competition enforcement in Mexico? We see this as a growing trend around the world, so I'd be really keen on understanding what's the Mexican perspective.
As you mentioned, this is a trend that is going on worldwide, and I think it relates to what I was just saying before on competition policy. Yes, you have to ensure market efficiency and the competitive process, but you also have to look at it from the consumer point of view and from the general population point of view. So yes, I would predict that it is expected to be more closely aligned to industrial policy. But as I mentioned, as the shift is going on, or will probably go in Mexico and is going on around the world, I think that has to be accompanied by clear and transparent procedures, clear and transparent priorities, unbiased analysis, in order to prioritize in sectors that are strategic for national development, that are strategic to foster innovation, to supporting industries that are also critical to economic growth, and which will ultimately, as I mentioned, benefit consumers and benefit the general population.
Well, thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you to our listeners, and thank you to Concurrence.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, Conquerors. It was my pleasure.
You listened to an episode of Antitrust Code by Concurrences. If you want to read more about this topic, check the Concurrences website, where you can find all relevant articles. Follow us on Twitter @CompetitionLaws, and join the Concurrences group on LinkedIn to receive updates on our next podcast.